People often say Benjamin Franklin wanted the turkey to be America's national bird. This idea is pretty common. You hear it in schools, you read it in history tidbits, but it's not quite right. The real story is more interesting. It shows Franklin's sharp wit. It also shows how things can get misunderstood over time. He did talk about the turkey. He also talked about the bald eagle, but his words were not a formal proposal. They were more like a clever, critical observation. Let's look closely at what he really said. Let's see why this myth caught on, and let's see what it tells us about Franklin himself. So where did this whole turkey idea come from? It's a good question. Most people just accept it as fact. They think Franklin really lobbied for the turkey. They imagine him arguing passionately for it. But that's not what happened. The idea really comes from one specific source. It's a letter Franklin wrote. He wrote it to his daughter. Her name was Sarah Bache. He sent the letter in 1784. This was a few years after the Great Seal of the United States was officially adopted. At that time, Franklin was living in France. He was serving as America's minister there. He was old by then, but his mind was still sharp. He was still very much an observer of people and politics. He often wrote letters. He shared his thoughts in them. He used his letters to comment on things. He would give advice, or he would just share his opinions. This particular letter was no different. He was giving his thoughts on something already done. He wasn't trying to change anything. The letter mentioned the Great Seal. Specifically, it mentioned the bird on the seal. This bird was the bald eagle. The seal had been approved in 1782, so 2 years before Franklin's letter. He was just looking at a copy of the seal. He was seeing the eagle on it, and he had some strong opinions about it. His opinions were quite critical. He didn't think the eagle was a good choice at all. And this is where the turkey comes in. He used the turkey as a comparison. He used it to highlight why he disliked the eagle. He didn't say, let's make the turkey the national bird. He said things like, the turkey is a more respectable bird. He said this while also tearing down the eagle. This distinction is key. People often miss it. They take his praise for the turkey as a direct proposal, but it wasn't. It was more a clever jab. It was his way of saying, you guys picked the wrong bird, and here's why. Franklin loved to debate. He loved to use humor. He used satire. He would often make a point by exaggerating. He would use strong language. This letter is a classic example of his style. He was having fun. Or he was being witty. He wasn't writing a serious policy brief. But because he was Benjamin Franklin, his words carried weight. And because the image of the noble turkey fighting off a cowardly eagle is so appealing, the story stuck. It turned into a legend. A story that's mostly true in spirit, but not quite accurate in fact. We need to dig deeper into what he actually wrote. Only then can we really understand his message. Let's get right to it. What did Franklin actually say in that famous letter? He wrote to his daughter, Sarah Bache, on January 26, 1784. He was commenting on the Society of the Cincinnati. This was a group of officers from the Revolutionary War. They had designed a medal. This medal featured an eagle. Franklin thought the eagle on their medal looked like a turkey. This observation was his starting point. It led him to share his thoughts on the bald eagle as a symbol in general. He did not hold back. He called the bald eagle a bird of bad moral character. That's a strong statement. And he gave several reasons for this harsh judgment. He laid out why he thought the eagle was unworthy. First, he said the eagle was lazy. It doesn't hunt its own food. Instead, it steals. He wrote that it does not get his living honestly. He observed it just sits there. It waits for smaller, more industrious birds to do the work, then it swoops in, it takes their catch. He specifically mentioned the fishing hawk. He said the eagle would watch the hawk catch a fish. Then the eagle would chase the hawk. It would force the hawk to drop its food, and the eagle would then snatch it up. This, to Franklin, was not honorable. It was not a good example for a new nation. A nation built on hard work and self-reliance. Second, he called the eagle a rank coward. He said it could be easily driven away, even by much smaller birds. He noted that even little kingbirds could chase an eagle. They could make it flee from its territory. This image did not fit a symbol of strength and courage. The new United States wanted to project strength. It wanted to show bravery. It wanted to be respected. A cowardly thief did not fit that image for Franklin. He felt it was a disgrace. He summed up his feelings by saying the eagle lives by rapine. This word means living by plunder, by violent seizure, by theft. He saw the eagle as a predator in a dishonorable way. It wasn't noble, it wasn't fierce in a good sense. It was just a bully, a lazy, thieving bully. For Franklin, the symbolism mattered. He believed national symbols should represent the best qualities of the people. They should inspire. They should embody virtues. The bald eagle, in his view, did none of these things. It represented the opposite. So, his critique of the eagle was very clear. It was detailed. It was cutting. But what about the turkey? He brought up the turkey directly after describing the eagle's flaws. He used it as a contrast. He used it to show what a good bird could be. He wasn't saying, let's remove the eagle and put the turkey there. He was saying, if you're going to pick a bird, at least pick one that isn't such a terrible character. The turkey served as his positive example. It was the bird that embodied the traits the eagle lacked. This is a crucial point. His praise for the turkey was always in relation to his scorn for the eagle. It was a comparative argument, not a standalone proposal. It's like saying, this car is terrible, it breaks down all the time. My old car, though, that was a respectable vehicle, always got me where I needed to go. You're not necessarily saying you want to bring back the old car, you're just highlighting how bad the new one is by comparison. Franklin was doing something similar with the birds. He was making a strong, witty point about the symbolism chosen for his country. After tearing down the bald eagle, Franklin then built up the turkey. He didn't just mention it in passing. He gave it some serious praise. He saw many good qualities in the turkey, qualities that he believed were much more fitting for a new nation like America. He called the wild turkey a much more respectable bird. This was a direct counterpoint to his bad moral character assessment of the eagle. The turkey, in his eyes, had integrity. He went on to describe the turkey as a bird of courage. This was a big deal. Courage was a highly valued trait in post-revolutionary America. The nation had just fought a war for independence. Bravery was essential. Franklin believed the turkey showed this. He wrote somewhat humorously about how the turkey would bravely defend its home. He said it would not hesitate to attack a grenadier of the British Guards who should presume to invade his farmyard with a red coat on. This is classic Franklin. He's mixing patriotism with a bit of a joke. He's imagining a turkey fearlessly taking on a fully armed British soldier. It's an image that speaks to the defiant spirit of the new nation. It's also a stark contrast to the cowardly eagle he described. Another important point for Franklin was that the turkey was a true original native of America. The bald eagle is also native to America, but Franklin emphasized this point for the turkey. It was uniquely American, it wasn't found in Europe or other old world empires, it was distinct. This idea of being original and native was important for the newly formed United States. It wanted to distinguish itself from European monarchies and traditions. It wanted its own identity. The turkey, to Franklin, embodied that unique American spirit. It wasn't an imported symbol. It was homegrown. Beyond courage and nativeness, the turkey also had practical virtues. It provided food. It was a useful bird. This appealed to Franklin's practical, utilitarian side. He was always a man of common sense. He valued things that were beneficial. The turkey was a source of sustenance. It wasn't just a pretty symbol. It contributed. It served a purpose. This was a different kind of value than the abstract symbolism of power and majesty that the eagle represented. So when Franklin praised the turkey, he was really highlighting what he saw as genuine American values. He was talking about self-reliance, courage in defense of one's home, and being truly indigenous. He saw the turkey as a hardworking bird. It didn't steal its food. It wasn't afraid to stand its ground. These were traits he admired. These were traits he felt the United States should embody. But let's be clear, this was a character assessment of the birds. It was not a serious policy proposal. Franklin was famous for his wit. For his love of satire, he used humor to make serious points. His observational skills were legendary. He was always looking at the world around him. He'd find ways to comment on it. This letter fits perfectly with his personality. He was taking a popular symbol, the bald eagle, and turning it on its head. He was using a common, everyday bird, the turkey, to show the flaws in the noble choice. He was using the turkey as a rhetorical device. He was making a point about national character. He wasn't actually trying to get the turkey placed on the Great Seal. He knew that wouldn't happen. The seal was already done. He was simply offering his highly entertaining and insightful opinion. His words give us a window into his critical thinking. They show his belief in a certain kind of honest, self-reliant American spirit. This spirit, he felt, was better represented by the humble but brave turkey than by the majestic but morally flawed bald eagle. To truly understand Franklin's comments, we need to look at the history of the Great Seal itself. This wasn't something that was just decided overnight. It was a long process. The Continental Congress started thinking about a national seal very early on. This was even before the Declaration of Independence was signed. They wanted a symbol for the new nation. something that would represent its sovereignty and its values. The first committee to design a seal was appointed on July 4th, 1776. That's right. The same day the Declaration was adopted, this committee included Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. So Franklin was involved at the very beginning, but this committee didn't get very far. They came up with some ideas, but none were accepted. Over the next 6 years, there were 2 more committees, and more people got involved. Artists, designers, and consultants contributed ideas. Many different symbols were considered, everything from allegorical figures to classical motifs. It was a complex and drawn-out process. Franklin, though, was not involved in these later stages. He was serving overseas during much of this time. He was busy securing alliances and funds for the war effort in France. He was far away from the discussions happening in Philadelphia. The final design for the Great Seal was approved on June 20th, 1782. This was 2 years before Franklin wrote his letter to his daughter. The person most responsible for the final design was Charles Thomson. He was the Secretary of the Continental Congress. He took elements from various proposals. He combined them, and he added his own ideas. It was Thomson who chose the bald eagle as the central figure. The designers of the seal had their own reasons for picking the eagle. They saw it as a symbol of strength. They saw it as a symbol of courage. It represented the new nation's power. It showed its independence. They wanted a bird that conveyed majesty, a bird that projected authority. The eagle also had classical roots. It was used as a symbol by ancient empires, like the Roman Empire. This connected the new American Republic to a long tradition of powerful states. The eagle held arrows in an olive branch. These symbolized war and peace. It had a shield representing unity. All these elements were carefully chosen for specific meanings. So, when Franklin wrote his letter in 1784, the decision was already made. The Great Seal was official. The bald eagle was firmly established as the national bird. As Franklin's comments were post hoc, they were an opinion on an already decided matter. Well, he wasn't lobbying, he wasn't trying to sway a vote, he was merely offering his personal, critical, and somewhat humorous take. He was reacting to something that was already a done deal. It's important to keep this timeline in mind. Franklin's critique was not part of the active design process. He wasn't in a committee meeting arguing for the turkey. He was an elder statesman writing home, sharing his sharp observations from afar. The designers of the seal had their serious, weighty reasons for choosing the eagle. Franklin, with his characteristic wit, chose to poke fun at those serious reasons. He chose to look at the bird from a different, more practical and moralistic angle. He saw the gap between the intended symbolism of majesty and what he perceived as the eagle's real-life, ignoble character. This gap was where his humor and critique found their target. He was essentially saying, you chose a bird that looks powerful, but its character is terrible. So, if Franklin didn't actually propose the turkey, why does this story keep popping up? Why has it become such a widely believed myth? There are several reasons, and they tell us a lot about how history is remembered, and how Franklin himself is seen. First, there's the core misunderstanding. People read Franklin's praise for the turkey. They see his harsh words for the eagle, they connect the dots too simply, they assume he wanted the turkey to replace the eagle. They miss the nuance, they miss the context of his letter. They don't realize he was being satirical. They take his words literally. This is an easy mistake to make, especially if you don't know the full history of the Great Seal, and if you're not familiar with Franklin's specific style of writing. Second, the story has a certain appeal. It's quirky, it's unexpected, it makes Franklin seem even more eccentric, more lovable. He was already a larger-than-life figure. He was an inventor, a scientist, a diplomat, a writer. Adding the guy who wanted a turkey for the national bird just adds another layer to his legendary status. It makes him seem more relatable, more grounded. It's a good what-if scenario. What if America had chosen the turkey? It sparks imagination. The story also captures Franklin's spirit. He was known for his common sense. He was often against pomp and circumstance. He valued practicality. He liked things that were useful and honest. The idea of him championing a humble, hard-working turkey over a majestic but morally flawed eagle just feels right. It aligns with his well-known persona. It fits his anti-establishment streak. He often challenged conventional wisdom. So, it's easy to believe he would challenge the choice of the national bird, too. The story also highlights a deeper point. Symbols matter. How we interpret them says something about our values. Franklin's letter, even if satirical, makes us think about what our national symbols truly represent. Do they embody courage and honesty, or do they represent something less honorable? The myth, in a way, forces us to consider these questions. It keeps Franklin's critical perspective alive. It encourages us to look beyond the surface. And let's not forget, Franklin was a master of using wit. He used humor to make a point, sometimes a very serious point. His letter about the turkey and the eagle was a commentary on national symbolism. It was about national character, it was about the perceived virtues and vices of the young republic. It was never a serious lobbying effort for the turkey, but it was a very effective way to express his views. And it was memorable. So memorable, in fact, that it created a lasting myth. So while the turkey never stood a chance of becoming the national bird, Franklin's words have given us something valuable. They give us a funny and insightful look into his mind. They show us his cleverness. They remind us of the early days of the nation. It's a fun story to tell, and it teaches us that even the greatest figures in history can have their words twisted. Or misunderstood. But in this case, the misunderstanding has led to a beloved, if not entirely accurate, piece of American folklore. It's a reminder that history is not always neat and tidy. It's often full of colorful characters and their spirited opinions. And sometimes those opinions create legends that live on for centuries.